Welcome back to another episode of Out of Home Insider. It's crazy to say out loud, but this episode marks the 2-year anniversary of the podcast. And I'm so grateful for you taking the time to listen to this episode because it's a wild one. And thank you for all of your support over the last 2 years. It's been an amazing ride. And long before Steve-O ever duct taped himself to a billboard, 3 men lived on a billboard in Allentown, Pennsylvania for way longer than anyone ever expected. In 1981, the height of one of the hardest economic times in the last half century, 3 men chose to live on a billboard to win a mobile home. 9 months later, 2 men remained. Along the way, one got arrested for selling weed, and every brand in the world missed a seemingly obvious opportunity to capitalize on this viral campaign long before going viral was a thing. This crazy story was made into a documentary that you can check out at billboardboys.com. And today we're talking with Frank Petka, producer of this great piece of Americana and billboard history. So if you're looking to do something crazy for your next campaign and want to use out-of-home advertising like billboards to do it, check out onescreen.ai and schedule a demo. We'll talk through your crazy idea and how to make it happen. That's onescreen.ai and schedule a demo. Without further ado, let's go.
Welcome everybody to the Out-of-Home Insider Show, a podcast like no other, hosted by the one and only Tim Rowe. Get ready to have some knowledge dropped on you and to be entertained, because nothing's more valuable than food for your brain. So sit back, relax, we're about to dive in as the best industry podcast is about to begin.
There's probably folks tuning into this episode that have never heard this story before, so I'm really excited to share it with the authors of the documentary Billboard Boys, billboardboys.com. You got to check it out. Frank Petka here with us today with Pat Taggart. You guys went and took a bit of a story from the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania and a billboard and turned it into a real piece of Americana. Talk to me about how the project came together. I'd love to get into the story of the contest itself, but for the audience at home, Frank, tell us a little bit about the story that we're going to hear today.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. It is certainly a slice of Americana. It's just so fun. And the timing is great to have the opportunity to be on your show. So we greatly appreciate it, because obviously with the way things have gone in the past few years with pandemic and things, we kind of caught fire when we released 3 years ago. And then we had kind of a lull. We had some distribution issues, but now we have the film back and available for folks to check out. But the story is just amazing. We just kind of stumbled upon it through relatives in the Lehigh Valley. And we were able to get a hold of a 30-year look back in the local paper up there in the Valley called the Morning Call. And when we looked at it, we're like, wow, we got to tell this story. We kind of done some small things. We've done a few feature narratives and we've done some mini docs, but we wanted to do a feature doc. And this was just the perfect story, man. It had everything. I don't think we could have written it any better between the characters and the conflict, and everything in between. It was just so fun to read. So in any event, I can kind of, if you want, I can kind of go over what, set the scene, I guess, for the times back then. It was the early 80s. So unemployment was at an all-time high, like 14%. Mortgage rates were at like 18.5%. So if you didn't have a home, you weren't going to be able to afford one. And what this small AM radio station did as kind of like a publicity stunt to promote their station, because they were competing against the FMs and they were kind of a dying type of station being AM. And they decided they were going to have a radio station contest. And they were going to put 3 people against each other up on a billboard to compete against each other to win the prize of an $18,000 mobile home. So that was the genesis of this contest. And just wacky things kind of happened from there when they announced this. And now you have to, I guess, look at the time, right? We're talking about pre-internet, no cell phones, no social media, obviously. So to have a contest like this, it was really local. You couldn't really advertise it outside of their bandwidth. So they did this and they received over 600,000 entries to this small radio station. Wow. Where people had to show up and hand in little ballots that said why they need a home. That was what.
This wasn't a Facebook contest. This wasn't a like, comment, share thing. This was good old fashioned, fill out a piece of paper, walk it on down, and maybe you'll be one of the lucky three to live on a billboard.
I mean, we look at it now and we try to like how can we describe it in today's world? It's like reality show. It's reality TV before reality. It's Survivor before Survivor. These guys, man, were in this competition that really nobody heard of in the beginning, and they just wanted to go up there to have a chance to win a home. I mean, and they were competitors, and it was just wild how uniquely they all were suited to kind of compete against each other in what the station had hoped to be maybe 2 weeks max, which is what promotions run. Typically, radio promotions are like 2 to 3 weeks, and you're lucky if they're that long and you kind of get out of it what you intended.
But this went much, much longer. And just to paint a little bit more context, if for folks that aren't familiar with Eastern Pennsylvania, this is a region that's kind of tucked between 3 DMAs. It falls into like the Philadelphia DMA and New York DMA, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton DMA. Talk a little bit. You're from the Eastern Pennsylvania area. Talk a little bit about what makes Eastern Pennsylvania so unique, especially during this time. Bethlehem Steel, so much legacy that has come out of the Lehigh Valley. For sure, it's certainly like it's a tough blue collar environment and demographic. So it was unique. The setting was unique at that time because of that, and it's just it's a breed of people that are just resilient. I mean, again, like I grew up in that area, and it's just a tough working class folks. And interestingly enough, when the contest first started, Billy Joel released Allentown, which speaks to that. And it speaks to that. Allentown is a town in that area in the Lehigh Valley where this contest took place. So, it just kind of talks about like the iron workers, the Bethlehem Steel, Mack Truck, all these things were kind of in shutdown mode at the time. It was just a really tough time for that area in particular and the United States in general. So you've got this blue collar town that was so much of the backbone of the Industrial Revolution here in America. That's, in the early 80s is impacted by the socioeconomic conditions and factors going on in the world, record high unemployment at the time, and mortgage rates making it unaffordable. So you can imagine sort of maybe the depressed tonality to an area like this that depends so much on that blue collar, lunch pail type of environment. So you've got now an AM radio station that says, hey, if you go live on this billboard and you're the last one standing, we'll give you a house. And 600,000 people applied and 3 were chosen, and they thought it would go on for 2 weeks, but it went on for a whole lot longer. How long did this thing end up going?
I guess to put it in perspective, it went on longer than an NFL season, including playoffs and Super Bowl. So, yeah, man. And you put that so eloquently. That's why you do what you do and I do what I do. You really frame that well. Yeah, man, it was just kind of, these guys wanted, and you think about it, the home, it was pegged as an $18,000 mobile home. But in today's world, that's like 5 times, that's like $60,000. And it's nothing to sneeze over if you're talking about like that type of home. They're kind of luxury now. And this one was like the primo top of the line, where they had a sponsor that was willing to sponsor the contest with this high end. It was a high end home, being that valuable at that time in 1982. So yeah, you had these 3 guys that were just kind of, I can kind of quickly set the stage for these guys. You had one guy that was in his early 30s. He was an out-of-work truck driver. He lived at home with his parents, and he heard about the contest, and he entered kind of quietly. You had another guy that was, you had the other 2 guys were in their 20s, and they were just kind of different personalities. You had one guy that was kind of a mountain man, backpacker who was recently engaged. And you had another guy that was just out of the Army. So you have these 3 personalities of guys really. And the only guy, the one guy that was about to get married, he's the only guy that had a job. The guy coming back from the Army was going to look for work, didn't know what he was going to do, but he's coming back to live where the unemployment rate is an all-time high. You have the other guy that was just laid off. So these 3 guys were, it was kind of a perfect storm, and they were suited to kind of live up there for as long as it took. And that was their attitudes going into it. So,
and how did it? So I'm guessing early on the logistics, everything was pretty well coordinated. We're planning for this, it's going to be a couple of weeks. Who's going to really live on a billboard? Like who's going to live on a billboard for any extended period of time? So contest is underway. What are the first few weeks like? Does it get the burn that the station was thinking it would get? Does it get traction and really take off?
So the bizarre thing is, right before the contest started, the station decided it was going to change formats. So it was a country format at the time, and they were trying to promote it like this is a country boy type of thing. These people are rugged guys going up, or women going up, living on a billboard and competing who can stay the longest. Last man down wins, macho stuff. Well, they're switching formats to big band. So it doesn't bode well with that audience that they're looking for. So what happened was they had already gone forward and promoted and advertised. They're like, let's just get through this, whatever. It's no big deal. It'll give us attraction for the big band. So they decided to put the billboard that these guys were living on was indicating that it was switching to that unforgettable format. That was kind of what they used to describe the big band.
So the billboard, like the creative of the billboard structure they were living on was promoting the radio station. It was the new format that it was changing to.
Correct.
The country station that was changing to big band with 3 rugged country music fans living on it was changing to big band. That's the creative. And we've got 3 guys living on this thing.
Absolutely right.
You can't script this any better.
You can't. So at the time when these guys go up, they've switched. So they switched formats. People are listening. There's this contest they're not talking about because they just want it to go away because it doesn't suit their audience. So any advertising that they may have gotten maybe from that, I guess the country folks, the country listenership, they don't care because then they turn it on and it's big band. So they just want this thing to go away. And they expected it to go away, but they didn't know how to end it because that wasn't written into the rules. They were just like last man down. You can't clean yourself up there. You have to go to the bathroom up there. You have to get your food.
Hang on. When you say go to the bathroom up there, there's not like a porta-john at the bottom of the billboard that I climb down each time I've got to do that. So, like these guys were literally all of the things were happening on the billboard.
I may have glazed over that because I'm so like in the middle.
Yeah, let's go back to that part for anyone who's having illusions.
It's and like grandeur. Again, like for your listeners and for yourself, like put yourself in 1982. Like, what do you think it was like to be put 20 feet up somewhere and be able to be told you're not coming down? So whatever you do on from the ground in your home, wherever your conference is, you can't do it. You're doing it up there. So you need to go to the bathroom, number 1 or 2, you're doing it up there. They just gave the guys a small tent, like a 4x4. They had to crunch into across this billboard that was like, I think it was 15 feet across. So literally there's no space in between them. They put like a piece of plywood in between the tents. So there were 3 tents on there. So you had to use this little chemical toilet they gave you. And it didn't hold much. Like it's like the equivalent of like a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket, right? So, and God knows what it smells like. I mean, it's a chemical toilet. There's chemicals in it, but it's not like the technology we have today where you can prevent that smell. So they have to deal with that element of going to the bathroom up there. They weren't given any food, and they weren't giving anything like a shower wand. I mean, there's no such plumbing going there, right? So it's just this little toilet. Wash yourself, give yourself a sponge bath or whatever, or don't bathe, whatever you want to do. Where do you put your clothes at? Like, how do you get clothes? How do you wash your clothes? Like, it's disgusting, right? And the Wall Street Journal journalist that went up there said it was disgusting and it's gross.
Sure. It's like Woodstock on a Home Depot shelf.
Yeah, but Woodstock, it's like, voluntarily though, you can walk away if you want to. If you're grossed out, like you can't go to your fridge up there. Like, what are you going to do? So the rules were you go up the ladder and that's it. They pull the ladders away. You cannot come down under any circumstance. If you're sick, if whatever happens, someone dies that like whatever circumstance, you're up there. There's nothing in the rules that says you can come down. So they're stuck up there. That's it. And you had to have someone on the ground that was called like your aide. You had to give a name of someone that was going to come to the board and help you with whatever you needed. Because if you needed something, they also
they didn't have like staff.
No.
They didn't have people
No
that
staff.
were there. There's no team from the.
They gave them a toilet. They gave them a toilet, a tent, and they gave them a phone line, right? That had to be hardwired because there's no cell phones to each of the guys. And the phone line was only there so they could call the radio station, and the radio station could call them because they, in case they had to, if someone got sick or whatever, they had to emergency, someone falls off. Like, you don't think about that safety stuff that's in place now. Like, you could forget about it with OSHA in place. You could never do this contest again.
No, right.
Helmet, harnesses, God knows what type of zoning, like none of that happened. Like the police in the township, whatever, go up and do whatever you want. Like nobody even cared. It was just some gimmick that was going to end in a week or two. So nobody, they didn't think this through, and certainly didn't think that, these guys would be able to last because the conditions were just awful. So
Pat finds this story and this look back in the Morning Call, this regional newspaper that, hey, 30 years ago, this crazy contest went on, and you decided this was the perfect story. This was the perfect story. Where do you even start researching a project like this to create a documentary?
Yeah, well, if you have a 2-person team, you have a super talented guy that does all of the technical things that Pat does, from the filming, the shooting, to scoring, to everything in between. And you have somebody like me that just has to go out and find everything and anything that existed, and then and then convince people to do it for little or no money, and then just set up all the shooting, and then also research all the archival footage that exists, any media that exists. And back then, again, no internet, so anything that we could find online were things that were scanned into archives of all these different media outlets, which I sent you a list. There's like 100, so it's just wild, man. So, tracking down, hunting these people down, making contacts at all the radio stations that were no longer in existence, pretty much all the television. Yeah, there you have it with a bunch of these newspapers. So we were able to identify many of the, to get contacts at these places, but many we weren't as well. So maybe only 20% we were able to hit. You see some international stuff there too with, Japan, Germany, France, Australia. It was just wild, man, but it was so fun. Like I thrive on that type of stuff. Pat doesn't. Pat's like, hey, get me what you can, and please tell me nobody else has done anything on this story. And I found out pretty quickly that no one had. And we were really excited, man, to just dig in. And fortunately for us, the folks that we were, that we got in touch with were just salt of the earth people. They wanted to talk. Some of them had, they had some things kind of, I guess, stuck in their craw that they wanted to get off their chest about how things went down. From radio station personnel to participants. Like there was a lot of unfinished business, a lot of frustration with the way things turned out, and it got ugly. It started out great, fun, silly, whatever. It's this gimmick nobody cared about. And then locally, everybody cared about. And then nationally, everybody did. It was covered every day for 4 months in every major newspaper, every radio outlet, and every TV station. And then it became international too.
Wow.
So,
this is like the 1980 equivalent of going viral today.
Completely dead right there, man. It was viral before there was viral. I can't imagine if these guys had Twitter or Facebook or whatever, they would be instant celebrities, man. Like, and I guess to just mention, I think it was right before the pandemic for the NCAA, like the football Division I championships. If anybody's a big football fan listening, they actually had the Final Four of NCAA. The teams had one person representing them living on a billboard during the playoffs. And it was like whatever teams left, you win. Like you come down if your team loses. But guess what? That lasted like a week and a half. And they came down every day, 3 times a day, to have breaks, to eat, to shower, to go home, to sleep. Like they only came back in the morning. They weren't living up there literally. Like these guys are literally living on a billboard. You're up and you're up there, and last man down wins. And these guys would not come down. And the station was like, oh shit, what do? We didn't realize these guys wouldn't come down.
They did come down at one point for one 4-block period or 4-hour block period.
Yeah, sorry.
Tell that part of that's the craziest part of this story to me is someone got arrested for selling weed on a billboard.
Selling weed, man, selling marijuana from a billboard. And And the guy, even talks about in the film, he's like, I'm probably the only guy in history to get arrested for selling pot from a billboard. And that's exactly what happened. It's up to the viewer to decide whether it was entrapment or not. I mean, we feel like it was, but yeah, man, basically it was 6 months in, it was like the 180-day mark. Cops climbed up that billboard unexpectedly to this gentleman's tent. His name was Dalton Young, and they unzipped it and identified themselves as the police. And he was under arrest for selling marijuana. And he's like, "What? No idea what was going on there." And luckily for him, he's like, "Well, they didn't handcuff me till I got down the ladder, so that was really nice of them." It's yeah, man, just a bizarre twist, and that definitely was a major hook that got us in the spot where we wanted to tell this story. But yeah, they pulled him down, and then they had the witnesses to whether he did or did not sell or use marijuana up there were just the two guys next to him on the platform. So the judge, they ended up giving subpoenas to these guys. They were issued subpoenas on the board by the township, and they had to come down, or they were going to be in violation of the law, and then they were going to face other, whatever that leads to. So they had to go to the contest. The contest says, "Fine, we'll let you guys come down, but only for a 4-hour window, maximum 4 hours." And so they had to come down. They let them shower at the 6-month point, and they gave them a McDonald's breakfast, which is pretty funny because the guy who's owned the stations and owned like a bunch of McDonald's, super millionaire, $80 million guy in the Lehigh, is the one that, conjured up this contest. And he gave them like a little McDonald's breakfast, and they showered. And then that was it. They testified that they didn't see anything, hear anything, and they went right back up. But they didn't let that guy go back up. They said, "You're not allowed to go back up until your trial's over." And they kept pushing it off, continuances. So he really didn't get the benefit from the situation. He just got pushed out of it. And it sucks, man. He's a super cool, regular dude that it still sits deep with him. So,
wow. So then there were two.
And there were
We're
two.
at the 6-month mark. There's 2 contestants remaining, our Army veteran and the gentleman who had just gotten married 3 months before the contest. So at this point, he's been married 9 months, been living on the billboard for 6 of those 9 months.
You are correct.
All right,
so you think his wife is happy? I mean, how happy is that lady?
She's like, you better win that house. Don't come down or don't come down.
Yeah.
How did the next few months go? How does all of this come to a finale?
Well, I think that the drug bust thing, it took its toll on the guys because they had touched ground. They rubbed some dirt on their face, as the one guy said. So he's like, "What are we doing up here? Like, what can we do to leverage this contest against?" And they had already started to do that a few months prior, where they were like, "Hey, it's us against them. This is this big rich guy, and this is this radio station, and they're exploiting us." And some of the newspaper outlets were writing articles to that effect. And they started riling these guys up. And the one guy who was very easily swayed was the guy who had recently gotten married. Actually, had just gotten married. So right before the contest, like you said. So he was kind of like more of like a puppet into the hands of the media that was trying to turn this thing around and say, "This is this big bad guy." And meanwhile, the contest organizer is saying, "You entered this voluntarily. We're not forcing you. You can come down." But It got really ugly, man. Once the media got its hooks in, and the media was able to put things in articles and television, and there was no social media recourse for anybody to say anything different, right? So the public is only hearing one side of what's going on. And that really created like a bitter conflict between really the one guy living up there. The other guy was like a chilled, laid back dude. His name was Ron Kistler. He's like, "I'm just going to stay up here. Nobody's going to beat me. I don't really care what happens. I'm staying here." And his father told him that before he went up there. And he tells that. My dad said, "You go up there. You don't come down until you win this house. This is your chance. This is a once in a lifetime. You're out of work. Dig in and stay there. That's it."
Sure.
The Army guy was like, more of like just kind of a laid back dude, man, like a hippie type guy, like chilling out. I mean, he was involved with marijuana, but he wasn't selling it. He may have smoked it, but he was just like a chilled out guy. And then the third guy is Mike McKay, He's the guy that's married and was like looking for the fame and the attention. He's a reality star. You know, he's so ahead of his time with what he wanted to be and what this could be. Like, this identified him. He lived through this contest. Any chance he took to be, he was a self-promoter. He was awesome. So, I mean, for me, not to kind of stop where we're talking about the 6 months, but the tie-in to what you do and what your industry does, this was an unbelievable juggernaut opportunity for some brand of whatever to take advantage of this. You're getting daily publicity. Billboards are meant for people to drive by, right? And you get in, you see them and you're like, oh, maybe if I see it 7 to 10 times, then I'm going to actually pay attention. This was in your face every day in the newspaper and television, magazines. They were the outlets back then. So you had an absolute amazing opportunity to advertise, and nobody did it. They couldn't do it fast enough. They tried to do it once it hit like the national scene. Like, someone like you, I would think, like, lick your chops in this situation. This is covered. It's free publicity. You're not paying for it. Like, you could pay for the billboard, and they were paying like 400, whatever it was, $400 or something they were paying, I think, for 3 months or whatever at a chunk, right? Compared to, what is it, $3,000 or whatever it is now. So I don't know, man, like, that's such a law. It's like the great, beautiful failure. When you look at that, people were scrambling to put things in place, and then the bust happened. So if you can look at it, like, if we try to like chunk it up this way, they went up at the end of September. Let's say they went up almost in October. So you have really nothing going on, right? Back then,
this is like, actually the anniversary was just the other day.
It was almost 40 years. It was 39 years ago. Yeah, a few days ago. But these guys go up there. Nobody cares. I mean, everybody's hurting. Nobody cares. Nobody knows. There's zero coverage, except this AM radio station did this little thing. However, by the response, people were desperate for a home, right? So those 600,000 entries, people wanted the home. They're hurting. People are hurting. But the one guy actually, he wrote, they had no limit to how many times you could enter. So the guy who's the self-promoter entered 37,000 times. And he literally entered 37. But anyway, these guys, you can enter and re-enter. But the bottom line is that people needed a home. Times were tough. So nobody knew about the contest except for the people that were entering. And the people that didn't get in were probably like, screw this, I don't care. So the listenership to the station didn't increase. Like, nobody cared. People were listening for big band, so they didn't care about this contest, But anyway, sorry, man, I got sidetracked there. Bring me back. Where were we at right there?
No, we'll take any rant about how great billboards are. That's always welcome here. And I think that's kind of like a beautiful irony in this, is that the radio station chose to use a billboard for their promotion, which speaks exactly to your point about the power of out of home. So Mike McKay, did I get his name right? Was it Mike McKay?
Yes.
So Mike McKay, Ron Kistler, they're still on the billboard. Ron, is under directive from Dad. Do not come down off this billboard. This is your opportunity. You got nothing else going on in your life, kid. Just stay there until the other guy comes down. And then you've got Mike McKay, who has entered 37,000 times, found the promotional opportunity for himself within it, who ultimately ends up winning the house.
Yeah, man. I mean, they both did. It was like a split arrangement towards the end. Nobody came down. I mean, they didn't come down.
Nobody came down.
How did they end it? They were put in a situation where they were able to, they bucked up for another home. So they said, guys, please come down. We're going to give you each a home. Like, I don't mind talking about it because it's like the Titanic. Everybody knows what happened, but everybody still wants to watch how it happened. And that's the story that we tell here. So these guys, they were like, guys, we'll give you the home. Just please come down. Like, they had to beg them to come down just because they feared something bad was going to happen. Like, after the drug thing, the publicity went so negative and sour, and they were really coming at the owner and his empire that he created and what type of guy he was. And then they're on Phil Donahue, and then they're in a feature on Rolling Stone and People and Time Magazine, and they're in all
you've got the Rolling Stone magazine from the
and most people will recognize this guy.
Yeah, there he is.
A little bit too young, but it's Eddie Murphy
face Eddie Murphy
with the balls to put his finger in his nose because he can, and he's Eddie
a legend.
Murphy. So Yeah, man. So there's like a 6-page article right in the middle of this Rolling Stone magazine, actually from July of '83. The contest had just ended. So people were still like blown away. So it really hadn't trickled to these other outlets and kind of till it was over. But yeah, these guys came down under their own accord. They were each offered a house, a car, and vacations to like Hawaii and these other vacations, and a full wardrobe. So they were given what they were promised by staying up there plus extras. So, they
just to get them down off the
down, man.
We got to end this. Let's end it.
They announced it on Good Morning America, which is pretty cool. So we have footage of them doing that. We have footage of them right before that, a few months before, with Phil Donahue trying to stir the pot about the whole exploitation angle. I'm surprised that Mike came down because he wanted to stay. He wrote a song up there. He learned how to play the guitar up there. He did so many cool things. And Tim, one thing I forgot to mention too is that because there's no social media, people wanted to get a hold of these guys. One of the journalists published their phone numbers and everybody's calling them. Then the phone bills are going crazy up there. So the station actually billed them for their phone bills.
The guys living on the billboard for their wow.
Billed the guys for their phone. They were getting they say hundreds of calls a day, including international calls. Some people that didn't speak English, they're saying, "We are the French," and they're trying to whatever was being done. Meantime, the station is getting flooded with calls. How can we schedule time to talk to these guys? They're calling the guys themselves. People are writing letters. They got thousands of letters, each one of the guys. And we have a lot of the letters that some of their family kept. How did you communicate with people back then? So they were pen pals. It was just nuts, man. It was just absolutely nuts. The Wall Street Journal really pushed it onto the scene when they published their article in early December. Right when the contest organizer said, we're going to end it. We're going to end it by Christmas. We're going to bring them down. We're going to give all 3 of these guys a home. That was their plan. The Wall Street Journal just blew that up by doing their article, because then they were they woke up the next morning to just phone calls, people showing up their door. What are you guys? And then they got wind of Wall Street Journal published a front page article on it. Right after that happens, Billy Joel, who had been working on Allentown for several years prior, released it, and it was just mayhem. So people were coming there for these guys, for Billy Joel, and it was just an unbelievable, perfect storm. But, to your point, billboards are timeless, the ultimate medium, and these people recognized it back then, but nobody took advantage of it, man. They just didn't do it. And I still don't. It just blows our mind, man, that there wasn't a marketing guy smart enough to see this. So many people had eyes on it. It was in your face every day for the last 4 or 5 months of the contest. How did somebody not, bottle that up and throw their advertising up there? So, because
let that be a lesson for anyone listening, anyone retelling this story. If you've got lightning in a bottle, put a damn cap on it, please.
God, man, totally.
Today, 40 years later, almost 40 years later, this remains kind of a point paint for the market. The area doesn't really lean into this as a piece of the legacy or anything. This is kind of a stain, if you will, from what I've gathered just in conversations about the event. What's that like today?
If you look at the resurgence now of Allentown with the PPL Center out there, they have major venue. They had the casino out there, the Sands Casino in Bethlehem, which is right there. Just this major kind of resurgence, and yet they don't want to look back and see where they were and maybe say, hey, look where we came from. They're just very against the whole thing. They think that they're being slighted. They look at it as a black eye. They absolutely despise Allentown, Billy Joel's song, Allentown. Billy Joel was even given a key to Allentown when he came out and performed at their venue back then. It was Lehigh University College venue, and it was December 27th, which this contest was in its infancy. It was a few months in. He performed there, and he didn't even know what was going on. So I don't know, man. It still hadn't hit yet. It was coming around. Everything comes around late. In today's world, we have the luxury of social media and, what's happened today? What's the hottest video? What's trending? There was no trending. There was no such thing. So imagine in 82, if someone says a guy selling drugs on a billboard, like that guy was ostracized. His family was ostracized from the community. Don't talk to that druggie. He's a druggie. He was labeled as like bad news. Stay away from that guy, because there was no like advertisements of people with drugs. Like, you don't have statistics going on back then.
Great point.
You know, like if you see like a picture of like a bag of cocaine or something on the news in the corner, you're like, oh my God, this happened here. It can't happen here. Well, maybe it's happening everywhere, but no one knows about it. So when you see that happen on the news, like this guy was like, went to exile, man. Like he was embarrassed. He would go to the grocery. Aren't you that guy that lived up there? Like, no, I don't. Like, he was so embarrassed. His family was embarrassed. Like, it was awful, man. Like, he was drugged through the mud in court. And again, that didn't even happen. He didn't even get charged with his felony until after, like, a few months after the contest ended. Man, it just sucked. He just sat around, and it was like the third. They gave prizes, like the first place. They kept trying to sweeten the pot. When they went up, it was like $18,000 mobile home. After the Wall Street Journal, it was like, oh, okay, if you guys second place gets free McDonald's for 2 years. Third place gets like 6 months in an apartment, free, rental free. Then they kept changing the prizes. Then when it was two of them up there, they were like, if one of you come down, you get a color TV, you get apartments, you get McDonald's. Like they
color kept TV. Like, forgot that was a prize.
It just happened, you know. And they were like, come down. And meanwhile, this guy, his trial ends. He technically was like the second place win, or second or third place. They gave him nothing. No, you're disqualified because you came down under the circumstances of drugs. And they had this big party at the end of it too, to celebrate it with champagne and all that. They had a big to do when they came down. There was media like everywhere for these guys coming down after the 9 months. And this guy showed up too, and nobody cared. You know, he was just like, "Oh, get away from us."
And he has since gone on to really be a great contributor to the community.
He's a
what's the update on him?
He's been like an addiction counselor in the community for the better part, I think, 20 years. And not that he was addicted anyway. Like, he just smoked pot here and there, like most people. The rules of the contest were you can't drink or like do any drugs or anything, but they all admittedly were drinking up there. The contest sponsor
9 months of living on a billboard.
People were throwing beers up to them after games, Phillies games, Eagles games. People were partying below the billboard at night. Like, it was happening. Once the media was covering this, Tim, like, people were there all the time, overnight partying, smoking, drinking, whatever. And these guys were talking to them up there, screaming down, whatever. Like, people, they were celebrities, man. They were celebrities. And then the publicity just went into the tank. And, the media doesn't want to promote like a happy story. Like, look at these guys. They was just like all the negativity.
It's always the negativity.
And Donahue spent, I think they estimated like $500,000 to move his tractor trailers in to do satellites and do the simulcast from the Lehigh Valley to his studio in Chicago. And he flew out radio station people to Chicago. And he did all this to have them like in studio. And it was like a fight scene in there with the raw footage from the story we hear from the guy that was there. But of course they cut that all out of the edit, and they just show what they show. Just wild, man. Like the behind scenes background and all the folks that were involved, man. It's just such a fun, awesome story. It needs to be told like as a feature, like a scripted, because there's so much opportunity to like fill in the blanks of all these things that we just couldn't get footage for. Like, it just didn't exist either because they discarded it or it didn't exist. I mean, we only lived through the present day interviews, a lot of the archive interviews, a lot of the archive media, but it needs to be told like right now. It's a phenomenal story with amazing like larger than life characters, man. So maybe somebody listening will be like, wow, what is that story? And they'll look at it and they'll look at the doc and they'll read some of this stuff. And I don't know, man. That's kind of like my biggest takeaway. It's like so frustrating that it's such a perfect story that, we told the story on our own dime. We did what we had to do financially, and it was worth it. We can't dig into those waters, deep waters of financing like a major studio, 10 million, 20, $30 million production. We just can't do it. So,
well, Netflix bought a Billboard plant a few years ago. Netflix, maybe if you're listening to this is a mini series in the making. Yeah. That would be some great content. It's billboardboys.com. Frank,
yeah.
Where can folks get in touch with you? What are the other projects that you've got going on? What are your latitude and longitude?
Yeah, man. I mean, thank you. Just billboardboys.com would be great. Like we have other like little side things that we're working on, man, that, there's really, maybe even no need to mention at this point. Like we kind of have some things we're working on under contract and things. So it's cool and exciting. But if anybody wants to reach us, billboardboys.com, you can see some of the, the fun media attention that we got when we released it. I guess almost 3 years ago today. And then it got taken off the platforms for a variety of reasons, but now it's back up on, on Prime to stream, rent, or buy. And we have also DVDs. We bought like 1,000 DVDs. You can kind of see some behind me here, and Blu-rays, because when we went to do all these, like we were in demand for screenings in the Lehigh Valley, but it still is like the folks up there and the environment up there and some of the pockets, they're still like DVD and Blu-ray people. Like they don't want to be on the phones and they don't want to watch things from their computer. So when we went to a few of these screenings early on, people's like, I guess the age group is like, there's like more of like the 60 to 80 or maybe 50 to 60 to 70. So we ended up getting all these things burnt. We probably sold half of them. So it was cool, man, for these people. So we do offer them as well on the site, but there's just value. I think there's a marketing lesson for young people right now that are in business to look at this as like a case study. What could we have done? What would we have done differently? Look at this opportunity. What was wrong with these people? Like they didn't see this. This was in their face. It was the golden, the goose that laid the golden egg. Like, what do you do with this thing? They didn't do anything, I don't know. It's just like, I've gone over it so many times, man. So everybody has their own takeaway, but there's so many different angles and lessons, and it's just a lot of fun, man. And we really appreciate you taking an interest and giving us the time to talk about it. Like even this thing doesn't do it justice for just like how polarizing these guys are. And unfortunately, the one guy had passed, so he lives through his archive footage, which is just lights out, man. This guy is like, you see him, you're like, wow, I can see him on TV right now, man. But anyway,
that's awesome.
Thank you, man.
Awesome.
Thank you again.
Frank, thank you so much. This has been absolutely awesome. Thank you for telling this story. It's so important to what we do as an industry. It's part of our heritage. So thank you to yourself and to Pat for putting it together. It's billboardboys.com. You can check out the trailer there. If you found this to be entertaining, which I'm sure you did, share it with somebody else who's just as passionate about out of home as you are. Make sure to smash that subscribe button down below in the corner, and we'll see y'all next time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tim.
Century, I finally came to my senses. I finally got my hand up on the tinted Benz, kid. I see the world clear through my tinted lenses. With the dream and the drive, the possibilities endless. Now print that, send this all the way to Tokyo. Take a trip down south, down to Mexico. Next stop, Shanghai, the world-class trade show. First class all the way, cause that's how we roll. Yeah, call us the rock star businessman. Rockin' shows, we handle business, man. We got our own future in the palm of our hands, cause divided